Hi, everybody, and welcome to GoodCRM's latest webinar. So if you don't already know me, my name is Steph Graham, and I am the CEO of GoodCRM. I know there's quite a lot of familiar people to us signed up to the webinar today, but there's also quite a lot of new names and email addresses that we didn't recognize, so thank you so much for joining us. And if you don't already know about GoodCRM or it's quite new to you, I'll just do a very, very quick introduction to who we are and what we do. So GoodCRM is a CRM platform, as it's in the name, and we are specifically designed for charities, nonprofits, and arts and cultural organisations. The platform does all sorts of things and all sorts of functions and can support lots of different areas of your work, particularly focusing on fundraising and kind of relationship management. So I'm really delighted to have Dana joining us today to talk about how you might use a CRM for your fundraising campaigns. There's so much that Dana could have talked about today in this topic, but I think what she's done is put together quite a comprehensive kind of start and end of how you would organise using your CRM to the best ability to manage a fundraising campaign. But there's so many other things that Dana could talk to us about in the future. So if you do have any other ideas of other webinar topics that you would like us to cover, please get in touch with us because there's so many other things that we could talk about and show you. So just to introduce Dana a little bit, Dana is the Business Development Associate at GoodCRM. So she's kind of leading a lot of our new business, really, and talking to lots of different new people about how they might be able to use the CRM for their work. Dana and I have actually known each other known and worked together actually for about 12
Mm.
years now. So we're old friends. So we both started our careers working together in fundraising. So we both have a fundraising background, and we also had a fundraising consultancy that we ran together until fairly recently. And now Dana has joined the GoodCRM team. So I will hand over to Dana in just a second. I've just remembered I have some housekeeping, sorry. There's a Q&A function this morning that you can use. So at the bottom of your screen, you should have a Q&A button. Please, if you have any questions about anything Dana's talking about or just about the CRM and how it works, pop those in there. That's a function I can answer your questions live in that chat without disrupting the presentation. However, please also use the chat function if you have any comments or questions. And if there is anything relevant that I feel like actually I could ask Dana part way through, then I'll do that. If I don't answer your question, actually it might be because I'm thinking that might be a good thing to discuss in a bit more detail at the end. So if I don't get to it, yeah, don't panic. It's likely that it just is a function that yeah, it'll be a good discussion point. So I will hand over to Dana.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Lovely to see you all. And it's really nice to be here. This is my kind of first training webinar session since I've been back on mat leave. So I'm really excited. It's been really nice pulling it all together and kind of getting back into the rhythm of my training side of things rather than mum side of things. So as Steph said today, going to be looking at fundraising with your CRM. Could have talked about loads of things, but I just really wanted to do something from start to finish to give you a sense of how you can use your CRM. So we're going to look at kind of fundraising campaigns today. But again, just to give you a very brief overview for those of you who don't know me, my background's in fundraising. I'm a fundraising trainer, strategist, and consultant. I've been working with Steph for the last 12 years now, supporting hundreds of organizations to raise funds. I've also been a trainer long term. So I used to be the deputy director on the National Arts Fundraising School, where I trained over 250 cultural leaders in kind of key fundraising skills. And I've been very lucky in that my work has taken me all over the world to deliver training and consultancy in Spain, Germany, Ghana, Cuba, South Africa, Australia. All feels very far away at the moment. And I'm really happy to join the team here at GoodCRM in May, just because I've become increasingly passionate about so much of my work I found was setting up these fundraising systems for people and being able to find a system that works really well to do that and support that is kind of why I was so inspired to join. So today, as I said, we'll be looking at fundraising campaigns specifically. So how to use your CRM to help you find the right audience for your campaign, so making sure we're speaking to the right people. How to create a strategic comms plan that inspires engagement. So what are we actually saying to the right people? Looking a bit more in detail at that campaign content and of course calls to actions. How do we actually get them to do the thing that we want them to do, which is donate? And then I'll be drawing on a real life case study that I worked on back in 2021, and I used GoodCRM functionality to do that, and also share a bunch of top tips and kind of free resources along the way as well. So that's what we'll cover today. And as Steph said, if you've got any questions, please just pop those in the Q&A. We'll get to those as we go along, but we'll also have loads of time at the end for discussion and further questions and things. So as it's GoodCRM, I thought we'd start with a little bit of context setting in terms of the good news. And the good news is that there is loads of information about potential funders and funding at our fingertips now. I remember when I first started, we literally had to pull out a massive book, which was a big list of all of the trusted foundations or all of the corporate organizations that give, and like literally go through a book and highlight things and put post-it notes. Like, it is not that laborious anymore. We can search things, we can set up alerts to get notifications about new funds. It's really a great time to be able to do that fundraising work. And alongside that, we have these free or very affordable tools like GoodCRM, like Canva, all of these cool, amazing tools to help us manage our workflows and our workloads. So to make that easier for us to do. So this is the really good context. It's become easier and quicker to do our jobs in some ways. But the tough thing is that our budgets are tightening up. You know, we might not be able to recruit that new post that we wanted. We might be going through redundancies. It's tough, right? Teams are shrinking at the moment. So our actual human manpower is shrinking a bit. And the funding landscape is getting more competitive. I'm sure lots of you who have been particularly looking at statutory funding or grant funding, for example, have noticed that it is just getting harder to get your foot in the door. And that means we have to look at people power. We have to look at engaging individuals who are connected to our work in our fundraising efforts, whether they're volunteers, trustees, participants and parents of participants. All these are people who understand us, understand our work, and may have the capacity and affinity to give. So it's really important to start engaging people in that fundraising process, which is why I focused on fundraising campaigns today. And there's basically a sort of 5 steps process to an effective fundraising campaign from start to finish. And we'll go through each of these in detail throughout the presentation. So first thing you need to do is you need to have a good, clear goal. I'm going to give you some examples of what nice, clear goals will look like, but a nice, focused, targeted goal that you can track and monitor. You then need to find the right people. So how do you do that? There's various criteria that will allow you the opportunity to find the right people to speak to. So we're going to find the right audience. Then we need to map out engagement. And when we're talking about the engagement, how do they engage with us? How do they engage with giving generally? Also, literally, what do they do in order to donate to us? It's kind of can be that simple. We need to build our campaign assets. So the content, any widgets, calls to action, stewardship materials. And again, I'll share lots of examples and top tips on how to build effective campaign assets that speak to the right audiences. And then finally, it's about tracking that campaign, engaging with people as they engage with your campaign, and inviting people to do more things. So how do you keep that relationship going once somebody has actually donated as well? So there's 5 steps we'll look at today, from just figuring out what you want to do all the way through to how you keep connecting with the people who did that thing that you wanted them to do. So in terms of step 1, it's very simple, but in essence, what's the main strategic purpose of this fundraising campaign? I say a lot of I talk to a lot of people who go, oh, well, we need to do a fundraising campaign. And you're like, okay, great. Why? And they're like, well, because we need money. And you're like, that's fine, but that's not exactly the right answer. So be really strategic about what type of fundraising you're trying to do. Is it about saying, you know what, we need more people who are giving us individual donations? Do we need to do a better job at improving the retention of people who've given us £100 or more? Do we need to ask people for a second gift? Do we need to grow people who are giving us a regular gift? What's that main strategic purpose? And just having that goal will help you understand everything else you need to do, because it will help you find the right audience. It will help you craft the messaging, rather than just creating something that looks like a really beautiful fundraising campaign, but doesn't actually have that strategic focus. So this will help you with that. My recommendation is just one goal is good. Obviously, there might be people who don't fit within that who might give, fantastic. But it will really help you understand and define all of the rest of the work when you understand that strategic purpose. The second thing is about finding that right audience. So there's 5 key things you need to consider when you're trying to build or create your target audiences. The first is their interests. So what are the things that they're interested in? What have they told us, or what do we know that to be true about them? So there's what they like, interest. There's also what they do in terms of their behaviors. So how do they engage with you at the moment? Do they buy tickets to events? Do they come to your cafe? Do they know your CEO? What are the kind of behaviors and things that they conduct that you can track? And then there are 3 other connected things called capacity, affinity, and propensity. And this is all about actually their ability to give and to be philanthropic. So people might love what you do and come to your events all the time, but they might not be inclined to give, either because they don't have the ability to, they don't feel that connection to do it, or they just don't. They're not people who are philanthropic in their life. So these 5 factors will help you to funnel and create that target audience for your campaign. And just to go into kind of how you find out all of those things about people, there's lots of different ways that you can utilize your CRM to do this. So in terms of interest, the things that people like or interested in, obviously people might tell you that. You might have a conversation with someone, or they might click a button on a pathway in a newsletter that says, yeah, tell me a little bit more about your programs with children and young people, or tell me a bit more about your comedy nights, or tell me more about your heritage program. So they may self-define or select that for you. The other thing is that you might flag it for them. So you might notice that they're coming to all of the jazz events running at your venue, or they might be coming to everything that you do to do with Shakespeare. You can then run segments to find that information out, and you can then create tags. And tagging really helps you organize this information to see easily and to then be able to segment again. So either you're setting up things where you can then tag it because they've told you that they're interested in these things, or you can tag on their behalf to flag their interests. And that then means that when you're using your CRM to pull together that target audience, you could use interest tags to create those first lists of people that you're engaging. So interests, tagging, lovely relationship there between your CRM and understanding a bit more about what people like. Then there's their behaviors. So what are they doing with your organization? And again, the benefit of a CRM, particularly a good CRM, is that when you've got that 360-degree view of how somebody engaged with the organization, you can start to track and understand their behaviors. Now, that behavior might include their giving history to you before. It might include how often or what they engage with in terms of your newsletter, which can be connected through MailChimp integration. It might be their attendance at events or tickets that they've bought to certain things. And it could just be ongoing communications that they've got with you as well, that you've tracked through things like email capture function. So their behaviors you can see. And again, one of the benefits of good CRM is we've got our timeline, which allows you to see all of those different behaviors. And you can then, of course, run segments to define and see how people are behaving. So if, let's say, for example, it's about creating an appeal for people who've been frequent visitors, you can see that by set the number of events that you define to be frequent, and then get a list of people to say, okay, well, these are the people who come a lot. So let's talk to them in a particular way and see if they're interested in donating. So interests, behaviors. Then we have, as I said, capacity, affinity, and propensity. And there's different things to do with this. Capacity is essentially their ability to give. Affinity is their kind of relationship to you and the organization. And then propensity is just their actual motivation for giving, whether they are kind of philanthropic or not. So there's different ways, again, that a good CRM, like a CRM, can help you track these things. Connection fields allow you to connect people to the organizations and people that they're affiliated to. So you can see here in this example, I've got Robert Goodpeople, who is a trustee of Good People Trust. And you can see that affiliation with his organization already tells me that he probably has the propensity to give, as well as the capacity to give, being connected to a trust. You might want to be capturing wealth information for larger donors. Again, you can use record forms in the system to be able to create this, and I'll show you an example of what that looks like in a minute. And then also understanding or capturing their giving trends and to other donations and other organizations. Again, gives you the signals as to their capacity to give, so that you can target a good amount, something that you know is feasible for them, but also makes it very clear that they obviously have the propensity to give. And it's just about figuring out how to say, this is why this one is important to you. So there's lots of interesting things you can do with connection fields and record forms to capture this information. So just as a very simple example, you could create a really nice record form that captures some more detailed supporter research, like their net worth, capture things like their public biography, or list some of the other charities and donation amounts they've supported. So as you're finding this information out, you can keep populating this record, which is then attached to their profile. Yeah. So those are the 5 things that you need to consider when building your target audience. Now, you might not be running criteria on all of those things every time, but really do try and map out as many of those as possible, because it will make sure that it's as targeted as it can be. And then what you can do is you can use your system to run a segment in order to find that audience. And the benefit of the system, like GoodCRM, is that we support complex segmentation, which means that you can run criteria based on all the different interests, behaviors, information you've captured, to be able to create a really nice target audience for your piece of work. So use that criteria from across the database to find your target audience. I've got a little example use case there in the bottom right-hand corner, being able to create a segment of, for example, high-value donors. So again, defining how many donations or what amount they've done, and then be able to find people who've made donations to that amount, will create a kind of high-value donor segment for you. So there's lots of different clever things that you can do here to create that target audience. And that just saves you having to send out something more generally that might not have impactful results. So when we're thinking about the very start and our goals, when we're clear on what our goals are, we want to be able to report back on those goals and say, well, this was really effective because 20% of the people that we reached out to made a donation of some kind. If you're just doing general appeals to your whole database without targeting, you're never going to get those sort of results that then impress, that build confidence in you, and also support you internally to make the case for more investment and more money and more time to do these kinds of appeals. So that's why I'm trying to be really to guide you to say, you might be sending out a targeted mailing to like 10 or 15 people because it's so niche, but they're absolutely the right people to hear that message at the right time. And you can be sending 6 or 7 of these targeted things at the same time to different groups of people to really make an impact. And that's how you do successful fundraising. So right audience, doesn't have to be huge, just has to be right. Think about all those different criteria that make them so. So the third step to a good fundraising campaign is mapping out your engagement. Now, I'm sure you've seen many of these pyramids before. This one is my favorite pyramid because it's a bit clearer in terms of those points before and after a donation. And it gets us to think about the fact that even if people aren't giving yet, they may be observing us, they may be following us. And at different points as well, they might actually build the capacity to, take part in collaborative actions and support us in other ways. So it's important to think about engagement from that perspective. But honestly, from a campaigns level, you just need to be thinking about where people are going to do what. And generally speaking, there are 4 big things you need to think about in terms of people engaging with you, in this instance, online through a digital campaign. There's the search function, in which case they might end up on social accounts that you have. They might end up on your website. they may end up subscribing or taking part in a newsletter. Now, they may also hop through all of those things and do all of that. But the truth is, nobody searches you, goes on your website, then signs up to your newsletter and then gives you a donation. Like, the journey is so convoluted and different. So it's very important that when you think about building your campaign assets, you're building them in a way that allows you to deploy them across these 4 areas. So writing content that you can put out on your socials, put on your website, put in your newsletters, all of which is nice and consistent, to then funnel towards that donation campaign. So anything that we talk about now in terms of building campaign content, the smartest thing to do is create that core case that you can then create those particular assets for, those big 4: search, social, website, and newsletter. So there's a few different things to a campaign assets. There's kind of 4 key things. And this is where I'll start to get into the weeds and show you some clear examples as well. The first is your overall campaign story, from which you can then create specific bits of content for your social media, for your newsletter, for your website. There's a particular technique to an effective campaign story. And generally, fundraising campaigns do have a kind of narrative that really works to engage. So I'll share my top tips about that with you. Then there's that main call to action. What are you asking people to do? Not just that, but how are you asking them to do it? What tools and techniques are you using to make that an appealing call rather than just shouting, please give us money down a microphone? Then there's our donation forms and widgets. And again, this is where GoodCRM really comes into its own in terms of being able to allow you to create custom forms, custom widgets, custom strap lines and call to actions for specific campaigns that you're running. And then finally, thinking about those stewardship materials. So great, somebody's read our story, they've answered the call to action, they've given us a donation, what happens next? So how can you encourage them to keep engaging and build that relationship further? So my favorite tool and technique for campaign story and content creation is by Mobilization Lab, Mob Lab here. And it's a kind of 5-part story creation. So you can literally use this framework to create your campaign story. And it's in 5 parts. The first part is the idea of the broken world. So what is the problem that you want to solve? And what are the kind of myths, barriers, things that are preventing change? And why does that matter to the people that you're speaking to? So what is that difficult, challenging context that we're facing? Next, it's your vision. So what is the solution for this? And it could talk about your mission as an organization, your goal for that particular campaign, and tell us why that's important as well. So a bit about your vision, kind of what's the solution to that? Then we need a bit about your strategy. So what are some of the actions, the activities, the programs, or the projects that you're running that help you create the change that's needed to meet this goal? So how do you think change will come about? And it's important, again, to keep this quite concise, because this is the bit that we love talking about. We love talking about our projects, but it's not the be all and end all as to why people are going to go. So succinct, but not too vague. What are the key things that you're doing that will make that difference? Then we have our call to action. What are you asking them to do? How's it going to help? There's 2 parts to it. What am I doing? How will it help? People really need to understand their role in this, and framing it in a way that involves them, that engages their emotions, that incentivizes them, and that makes them feel like they're part of a community is really important. And I will, again, share some examples and tools of how to do this. And then the final one that I think sometimes we forget is that wider movement story. So how does what you're doing fit into a larger movement for change? What are the values you want to convey? What sort of community are you creating? And thinking about that broken world scenario, how would you know that we've won, we've done that thing together? So this is a really nice framework you can use to create that campaign story from which you can then develop all of your content and your calls to action as well. So I'm going to share with you a real life example. This is a campaign that I worked on when I was the interim director of development at Activate. So Activate Collective was an organization set up in 2020 by Sophie Walker, who was the founder of the Women's Equality Party. And she really recognized the power that female community activists had within their local communities, and thought, wouldn't it be amazing if some of these people were encouraged and supported to become political representatives, because they represent us, they actually know what we need. So the idea behind Activate was born, and Activate was essentially a fund to support these women to get elected and to go out and campaign. The fund has now been merged with an amazing organisation called Elect Her, who provide all of the training and support and knowledge about supporting women to get into politics. So the fund sits really beautifully under that. But whilst the fund was getting going in the first instance, they brought me in to do some fundraising and just to see really if there was an appetite for people-powered funding pots for these kind of female activists. So I'm going to share with you the campaign story we created, the campaign that we ran through GoodCRM, and the results as well. But here it is, literally using that framework, we followed it exactly to the T. So the broken world situation is that democracy is not working, and that the failure of politics is a failure of representation. The problem is, the less our politicians look like us, the less they act in our interests, and the more at risk democracy comes. So the idea here is that democracy is not representative. That is the situation, the problem that we are facing. Activate is a feminist movement set up to raise money for women activists to stand in elections. So that is our vision, our strategy, our viewpoint. Through the Community Activist Fund, we support women to make change in their local communities. And through the Activate Fund, we then help them extend their power into politics. So we talk a little bit about that. We talk about the strategy and the fact that it takes women much longer to get elected than it does men. And it's expensive. And that's why we need the strategy of giving them money and giving them time to do it. Then there's our call to action. We can't do this alone. We need people. By you supporting these women, we'll change the face of politics, build better policies, and ultimately create a more diverse and inclusive politics that delivers better solutions for us all. So this is the kind of call to action, but also that wider movement for change. Brilliant women can fix our politics, but only with your help. You can fund the fight, and fund the fight is the call to action that we landed on for all the buttons that we clicked through on the website, on the newsletter. And then the sort of idea behind the campaign was turn the activists of today into the political leaders of tomorrow. So that is literally me following that Mob Lab framework, creating that nice core campaign story from which we created out lots of different content for social media, for the website, and for the newsletter. Ideas for you in terms of creating campaign story and content. There's different themes you can draw on depending on what you're doing. So some nice content that you can see is maybe impact focused content. So one donation, one life changed. Let's tell the story of how one contribution makes a difference. And then, of course, before and after stories. I think we particularly love this in like art sector, heritage sector, but lovely transformation stories from beneficiaries' perspectives of the difference that our programs and our projects made. So in nice impact focused campaign stories and content. Obviously, urgency based ones, it could be a countdown based thing. We've got 72 hours to raise £5,000 for this thing. Don't be afraid to use urgency when it's important. And you can also use urgency in a positive way. It's not just 72 hours to raise £5,000, otherwise it's a nightmare. It could also be before this big moment where we have the opportunity to do X, Y, and Z. And then, of course, batch funding. Again, another positive framing of an urgency-based campaign. We can double your impact. We can match donations. And then, of course, you've got your crisis response type stuff. We did a lot of this in the end with Activate, because pretty much every day there was a news article about something going horribly wrong in politics, which we could go, I bet you've read this story. Don't you want to change it? Please donate to us now. So responding to those real-time world events, news, emergencies, etc. Then we've got that more community-powered content. So things like a sort of why I give story. Can you reach out to trustees or existing supporters for testimonials and stories about why they give, to inspire people with their motivation, their propensity to give? Something else nice that you could just like a journey of a donation. I've seen organizations do this visually. So be like, here is where the donation came in. This is how it was distributed in this way. And this is the impact that it made. So what happens after someone donates? Take them on that journey to see that. And then you can think about doing a themed series of content. So maybe 3 to 5 emails or social media posts with a consistent storytelling arc. You can then use this to build out, newsletters that send every few days, social media posts that send, nice blogs updating on your website, improving your SEO. So there's really nice benefits. It's a little bit more work, but it's a great result to be able to do those themed series. And it just means that you're going to more likely get that observing engagement that tends to happen before people commit to a donation as well. And then in terms of your calls to action, so you might want to do something that's direct and urgent. Yeah, when you need support in critical times, it's time to say, hello, time is running out. We need you to help us reach our goal. So direct and urgent options, fund the fight. Emotional appeals. So how can you use a call to action that connects with supporters' empathy and values? Help us change your life forever, make a difference, all these things are emotional appeals. So you can also go down the emotional route. You can go down the community building route. So together we can build a better future, something that gives people a sense of belonging in their donation. They're not alone in giving, they're part of a wider movement to give. So can you create a little call to action that works for that? Obviously match giving, double the impact. Those of you doing big give appeals, the benefits of that. You can really pull into this incentivization at this point. And then, of course, kind of story-based calls to action or thematic ones. So you can talk about specific people or specific projects or specific themes, help Emma get the treatment she needs. And you can see that the interesting thing about that last example is that the organization is just operating in the background. The connection is between that supporter and the person getting that support as well. So lots of different ways you can structure your calls to action as well, with some example ones there for you. So donation forms and widgets, and I'll show you all the calls to actions in a moment, but important to get these right. And I never, ever, ever forget this quote from Bita Sorum, who's a consultant based in Norway, who says, think of your donation page as a conversation with your supporter. And she's so right. A lot of donation forms, when we don't have control over those donation forms as well, can be really clunky, can feel very clinical. And you can do all this work making these wonderful, targeted, emotional, human sounding campaigns. And then it gets to the point where they fill out the actual donation form and it just goes a bit static and a bit weird. So things to consider when you're building out your donation forms. Just include questions that belong there at that point. I know it's tempting to ask them for every piece of information that you would ever want from them, ever, ever, ever. The most important thing you want them to do is fill out that form quickly with minimal friction. So just make sure you have questions that belong. And, if you don't need an address line 2 and an address line 3, try to work with a form that doesn't have that. And obviously the benefit of GoodCRM is you can customize and build your forms and use the language and terminology that works for you and works for your audiences. You need to have understandable questions on there. So don't go putting in stuff that doesn't make sense and isn't related to the donation at that point. And for key things, just try and explain why you're asking. So I absolutely have no doubt that at that point of donation, you're going to want someone to opt in to that newsletter or to hearing more about the impact of their donation. You can explain why you're asking using the right software, and you can customize the wording around that with the right software like GoodCRM as well. So when you have the opportunity, tell someone why you're asking them for their email so that you can give them updates on the impact of their donation. Are you asking them for their phone number? It's because once a year you do a thankathon on the phone and you'd love to just be able to have a chat with them. So that's why I'm asking for your telephone number. I'm not going to phone you 20 times a day. I'm just going to phone you once a year. And once you explain those things to people, they're much more likely to fill it out. So it's just really important to think about those conversations and getting that opt-in that you need for GDPR purposes in a way that's impactful and important. So again, beautiful thing about GoodCRM is you can totally customize all your donation forms. You can make things required fields, and you don't have to make everything a required field. It's much more friendly when some forms give you options. You can add placeholder text, you can explain help text as well, and you can also rename and reframe lists. So an example that I've created here is, rather than just saying tick how you'd like to hear from us, I've phrased it as, I want to hear about the impact my donation has made via email, chat, WhatsApp. Just makes that bit friendlier for people as well. And this is the example of the widget that we used in the campaigns. This is a screen grab from the website. And I will say, for those of you who are thinking, oh, is this all a bit beyond me? It was literally just me doing this with a Squarespace website and my GoodCRM functionality. And you can absolutely build something that works. So you can see here, we've got our calls to action, we've got our campaign wording, but really nice and concise, because by this point, they will have read a little bit more about what we do, and we're just getting to the point of donation. You can see I've created a gift ladder here. We've given people the option to give once or monthly and the options to select their gift. And on the side, I've explained the impact that each of those donation levels make. So 20 quid will give her travel costs to campaign for a day. £100 will buy her posters and flyers for local canvassing. 250 quid will take care of her kids so she can hit the campaign trail. So it just at the point of donation, that's a really nice way to give people a sense of the impact that they're going to make and help them make a decision that sits within their capacity and affinity to give. So again, the beautiful thing about this is you can customize all of these widgets with whatever amounts you need based on the capacity and the affinity of the people that you are targeting. So if you are targeting that list of high net worth donors that we, created on our segments earlier, this ladder might look more like 250, 500, 1,000. For people who you're going out cold to your database, it might be more like 5, 10, 15. So you can just kind of be clever about how you deploy the amounts and the ladder and the options that you present to people to sit within a parameters that's comfortable for them, but maybe pushing them up to that slightly higher donation with all of that lovely text. So that's a bit about the donation forms. Stewardship material wise, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So how many times can you say thank you? I think at least 3, but keep going with it. You want to make sure you talk about the impact of your donation, and you want to make sure you give people follow-up actions as well. So once somebody donated, you have the option on GoodCRM to redirect to a URL. And we created a static page on our website to say, thank you for believing in the power of women. And you can literally see Sophie Walker there giving you a literal hug to say, thank you so much for your donation. Then we've provided options for next steps on this page too. So inviting people to connect with socials if they don't already follow us on Twitter or Facebook, or inviting people to get email updates at the point if they didn't opt in on the donation form point as well. So make sure on your thank you page, on your landing page, you give people a next step to undertake. The other thing that we did, thanks to GoodCRM, is we customized those gift aid receipts, which gave us another opportunity to say thank you. And in this one, we chose to create a nice campaign from Katie, who is a project manager, to say, thank you so much for joining the fight. Your belief in the power of women to change systems amazing. And we hope you feel really proud of the difference your donation will make. And that if you've opted in, we'll be in touch soon. So that's just a nicer, again, warmer thank you for that. Again, the beautiful thing about GoodCRM is you can do all of this in one space. So per campaign, you can change the strap line, you can suggest the donation amounts and the monthly gift, you can set defaults, you can set all of your branding, you can have bespoke donation forms. It's absolutely endless how much you can customize this based on your target audience every time. And you can generate as many of these as you need to target as many different audiences as you need as well. And it really is quite quick to do. You can do it all in one central hub. And then once you've finished all of those edits, you literally hit save, and the system will produce all of those widgets for you, which you can just embed, copy, and text over to your website, your newsletter, and your socials. Once somebody has made that donation, we need to think about how we take them on more of a journey as well. And this is where also the relationship between MailChimp and GoodCRM comes into play. So one of the things we're working on at the moment is a two-way MailChimp integration. So those of you who already have MailChimp integrated to GoodCRM will know that GoodCRM will create new contacts as people sign up to your mailing list and also show you on their timeline when they've clicked and opened campaigns. What we're working on now is that when you create segments, you can then push those segments to MailChimp to then go through automated email journeys following that. So one of the things that we had to manually do, but we would have been able to do with the click of a button when this functionality happens, is anytime somebody donated, we then added them onto a new MailChimp campaign, which sent them this the next day. And it says, Dear Dana, getting tiring looking at the news, isn't it? More decisions are being made for us, not with us. So you decided to channel your frustration or your hopes for a better future into supporting Activate. We can't thank you enough for your donation and for doing this and for taking action. And here's what you'll hear about as a new supporter. However, we need your help to grow the Activate supporter base. So can you spread the word by sharing the fact that you've supported with friends and peers? And people have the option to share that they've donated on Facebook, on Twitter, or on WhatsApp. And it's just inviting people to do another thing, to say, thanks, you've given to us. How about telling people about that donation? And they're helping to do that work for us to promote, to grow that community of funders as well. So some nice examples there of stewardship materials, hopefully. And I suppose the key with all of this then is using the system well to monitor, track, and follow up on things. So things that can help in the system. You can get notifications when you have had donations that hit over a certain threshold. So if somebody decides to give more than £500 to that campaign, you can get an email that notifies you to do that. So you can do some more swift following up and personal following up for those higher value donations. The other thing, of course, is that you will see the immediate effect of those campaigns within people's timelines when you're using the full system functionality, whether you're looking at their contact profiles on the people page, or whether you're monitoring it through the fundraising campaigns page in the fundraising suite. So it's very important to do that monitoring, tracking, and then segmenting to follow up following that as well. But just to give you a sense of the campaign results. So across that week of fundraising activity, we managed to grow Facebook followers, Twitter followers, Instagram followers. The big things were really increasing our newsletter uptake, again, because we invited people to do it at 3 different phases. We managed to raise £5,000 from about over 100 donors, and that was from a standstill. Nobody had funded us yet. This was the first appeal that went out. And 6 months later, one of those £500 donors was stewarded into a £5,000 donation as well. So I guess these are not huge results for some of you. Some of you will be operating on much larger results. But for those of you who are thinking, where do I start with this? I started from ground zero, and we managed to raise enough to fund one activist and then another activist after that. And that was great. And as I said, all of that funding has now been taken into a lecture, and there's lots of other ways the campaign has grown since then. But you can do it. You can do it with the right system, speaking to the right audience and the right assets at the right time. So just a very few extra things from me in terms of top tips and free tools. So the bit of stuff about newsletter practice. I get asked a lot, like, when's the best time to send emails? How do we do it? Generally speaking, between an email a day and an email a week. And that might be for your wider comms and marketing, but also if you are just fundraising focused in your speak, that would all be fundraising appeals. Please abide by the one ask, one email rule. I see a lot of emails go out there where there's literally 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 different things that you're asking me to do at every point. Don't do it. Send more emails with fewer asks per email. It is much more effective for open rates and for click-through rates. There's also the 3-to-1 ratio to consider. So when you're talking about fundraising appeals, please ask people for money. And when you've developed a lovely campaign and a call to action, that shouldn't feel scary to do. So for every 3 times that you ask for a donation, then follow with a soft ask, like read this lovely story or share your support for us on social media. So 3-to-1 ratio in terms of fundraising asks and then a soft ask as well. Always include a donate button or link in the footer of your emails. The reason for that is because on average, the most read areas of your newsletters are the top and the bottom. So think about how you use a PS note and what you might do there. So again, using a nice call to action as a final PS, please fund the fight, just gives people another opportunity to act on your call to action. Generally speaking, across most mail providers, the best open rates are within an hour. And after 24 hours, there's a less than 1% chance of opening. That is why people email 1 email a day, right? Because engagement tends to happen on the day in which the email campaign was sent. And generally speaking, just over half of emails are opened in what we call working hours. And they're mostly on mobile as well. So again, this is where the benefits of GoodCRM, mobile friendly in terms of its campaign and donation options, supporting Apple Pay and Google Pay really comes into it. Some of the best times, Tuesdays and Thursdays. You might notice you get loads of emails between 9 and 11 on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. That's because generally they're very good times to send emails that get good open rates. So a little bit of best practice support and advice from me. And then I've got a big long list here of some interesting and useful resources, but I'll send these through after to everybody who's invited. The webinar includes things like giving and key dates calendars, content calendar templates, and then some email, WhatsApp, and Facebook button generators. So you saw in that email that I sent via MailChimp was like share on Facebook, share on WhatsApp. I'm not super tech smart. I didn't like do some funky coding to create those. There's just a lovely button generator that does that for you by a brilliant organization called Forward Action. So I will send you those links that will make you easier, and even those of you who might be a little technophobic, be able to create pretty looking fundraising campaigns. But thank you all. That's everything I was going to wrap today, but please, happy to take loads of questions now with the time we've got remaining. And thank you all so much for tuning in today.
Thank you so much. That was so good. And actually, it was really good to see a real example of how you've gone through those steps and what the results have been. Also, I think, having that standstill point where it's like we currently have no donors, where on earth do we start? And even kind of, I guess that building that community is such a great thing to hear, because I feel like quite a lot of fundraising training is quite often using maybe information or an assumption that we already have, like a lot of that information or a lot of those people. I was actually thinking that maybe another webinar we could do is about how to use your CRM in your sort of prospect research
Yes.
stage, because you touched on that a little bit at the beginning. But also this has been quite an individual giving, obviously focused session. But we do have trust and foundations management functionality in the CRM. And actually there's a lot of research and things that go into identifying a funder that is a good fit. And then obviously then they go onto a pipeline where you're applying and you've got deadlines and reporting. So yeah, that was just a little thought from me. Having lots of comments saying thank you. I've got one question that hasn't already been answered, about whether you would recommend having, I suppose, like hidden. So you touched upon having the donation
Yes.
widget and using the a kind of, I guess, the adaptability and the flexibility you've got to kind of change the amounts that are all pre-loaded.
Yeah.
But yeah, would you recommend having different URLs basically with 4 different, I guess, segments of donor, like you said? And maybe obviously you wouldn't have them in your navigation in your website, but you could use them as direct links in your campaign. Because I know also GoodCRM you can do a predetermined giving amount as well that goes straight to the checkout page as well. I just was
Exactly.
wondering what you would recommend around those things.
I mean, I would say if it's a very targeted appeal, absolutely build that separate web donation page that you link to where your widget sits, and then you have that really strongly connected campaign story and those calls to action specifically for that campaign. And in different sizes organizations, in very campaign led organizations, people will be running 6 7 different links and A/B testing stuff and then pushing stuff that works. So the fun thing is that like we can do that even on a smaller scale, and absolutely doing that. If you've got the ability and the capacity to do it, I would definitely recommend doing it, because it just also creates that consistency through their journey of reading about the campaign, choosing to act, choosing to donate as well. If you are wanting to build a wider pot, then I completely understand doing targeted newsletters that all run to the same campaign. I think it really just depends on how granular it is. But it is absolutely a brilliant thing that you can do. And yeah,
Yeah,
if you can do it, great.
I'm thinking, like, a lot of charities, we have that support us page, on our main navigation on the menu, and we have our widget there, and it's just sitting there, and it's kind of like, build it and they will come. And then we're kind of like,
It's
nope,
just
they don't come.
exactly.
um, and actually we using the widgets in different ways and being really targeted, I think's brilliant. We've had another question around, do you know, or is there any best practice around suggested amount? So I think it's that predisposed, and it also,
Yes,
obviously, as we saw, you can highlight one of the amounts,
absolutely.
that is obviously doing a psychological thing, which is click me, and it's usually the most popular amount. But yes, should it be a certain percentage of your average donation? Should it be slightly above your average donation? What are the
Yeah.
thoughts there?
So loads of thoughts drawing on all the experience, all the behavioral economic stuff. Generally, you want to give people choice. So generally recommend like 3 options, possibly more if you want. So that gives people a frame in which to consider the
Yeah.
amount. If you just give them a blank slate, it doesn't often work. For some organizations, it works very well. But I think when you're starting out and people don't know about the impact that a donation level can make, it's really good to give people options. Generally, people, we are inclined to not be too wild. So we tend to go for the middle option. So basically, set the middle option as the ideal average donation that you're looking for. And generally speaking, let's say you've done some analysis and you're targeting people who've supported you before and their average donation was £50, I would put the £50 first. I'd push the middle to 80, and then maybe I'd go up to like 120 or something. So again, just pushing people slightly above where they've been before, but still within their consideration suite.
Mm,
Generally saying as well, I would set the default. So picking the colored button to go to the middle one, because again, we're drawn to that middle
yeah.
amount. And again, there's also lots of suggestion that best practice of creating that middle button is either red or orange to kind of create a sense of urgency in the mind is also really good practice. So even if that's outside your branded colors, you can even play with that on GoodCRM. You can literally set it as red, see if it makes a difference to your campaign if people click that middle button. So yeah, lots of good best practice about suggested amounts.
Yeah, I was
Go
going
for
to add.
average at the bottom and push people up basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of the work. So Dana and I worked together actually on some of the cohorts on the fundraising school, and one of the things we taught quite a lot during that course was actually have a play around. So test things, change the amounts. Obviously, do it within a controlled way. So maybe do a month where you're going to test something a bit different and track, like maybe if that's made a difference in that month. But yeah, have an experiment, because actually anything that we're kind of talking about today or Dana's talked about has come from someone trying something and seeing if it
Mm-hmm.
works. And so yeah, don't see your kind of donation widget or even the amounts or even the colors or anything as like set in stone and something that you've decided. We'd always recommend to kind of experiment with it a bit.
Yeah.
um
And the
Brilliant.
beautiful thing about doing it via the CRM is like you're not experimenting in the dark. You're experimenting in the space where you can then track the results of how you've experimented and whether it's worked or not. So that's the beautiful thing about giving yourself a system to work with that actually enables you to then look at that and go, oh, that did work. So let's do that again next time, or that didn't work as well, or all that kind of aspect is really, really important to
Brilliant.
that side of things. Yeah.
I've just had a question come into the Q&A. Sorry, it's quite long, so I'm just going to quickly read it. Oh, it's about another kind of a how-to, like more webinars on
Yeah.
how to do things, particularly in the CRM. So yeah, I think that would be really good. I think like you said, the one you've done today where it's like this is best practice in fundraising, and then this is practically how you can actually manage it in your CRM, I think is
Absolutely.
a really good idea. So thank you for that comment. I think I'll wrap it up there because we haven't had any more questions. But thank you so much for doing that. It's really, really useful. And I definitely think that we will do more of these. So make sure that you are subscribed to our newsletter, and then you'll get invited to any webinar that we have put on. There is going to be a webinar coming up next month. It's not actually one that GoodCRM are hosting, but I just wanted to let you know about it. So Super Cool, who are a web agency, and GoodCRM are co-hosting a webinar, and it's all about the new fundraising rules around the soft opt-in changes to legislation and data protection. So we will have Kate Fitzgerald, who has done a webinar for GoodCRM before. She's going to be talking about that from a kind of data point of view, and then we're trying also actually to enlist a fundraising lawyer to talk about the legal changes that have happened and why it's a brilliant thing for charities, because it's kind of softened up the law and the legalities a little bit around marketing permissions. So keep an eye on our newsletter for that one as well. And thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.